Hey guys, it's TRIZE here, and we're getting the most torque out of this Inline 3 engine in automation. This is the final engine that I'm covering for this part of the series, so let's get on with this engine build. So the first thing you gotta do on the top left portion of your screen is you set the year all the way up to the year of 2020 to maximize everything related to this engine. And after you've chosen the Inline 3 configuration, you may choose any block material that you may choose from. I'm gonna select magnesium for the sake of weight. And for the bore and stroke right here for the family capacity is you max this out each to 120 millimeters to get the engine size to 4,072 cubic centimeters, around 4.1 liters, rounding that up, with a dual overhead cam 5 valve, and again, whatever head material you may choose from, gonna select aluminum silicone for the sake of weight. And for this quality slider, as you see right here, for the open beta branch of version 4.2 of automation, you gotta enroll that in your properties of automation, is you set this to a plus 15 for everything. No matter if it's for the engine block in general, the top end, bottom end, the turbocharger, the fuel system, for the exhaust, for everything. For the balance shaft, you're required to have a balance shaft implement to reduce the chance of this fragile engine's crankshaft from exploding on you. And for the crank counter rods and pistons, we're going to be using the strongest materials as possible. So for the crankshaft, we're going to be using billet steel with the counter rod set to a lightweight titanium. And the pistons, you select the regular forged material. For the compression, like always in version 4.2, is you set this to an extreme level of a 15.0 to 1 ratio, with the cam profile set to the magic number for this part of the series, which is interesting, at a 52. And the springs and lifters, you set this to a very soft setting at a 13, and of course, VVT at all cams. For the turbocharger, we're going to be using a single turbo setup with a smart boost system, with the intercooler size set to 0 horsepower, so no intercooler whatsoever, which is pretty interesting for the meta of this game. And for the aspiration setup details, we're going to be using a variable geometry ball bearing setup, with the compressor size set maxed this out for the first option at 120 millimeters. The turbine, the second section, is you make this quite small to a 77.3 millimeters right here. The AR compressor trim is you set this all the way down the third option to a 0. And lastly, for the maximum boost, is you set this for the fourth option at 36.3 psi. For the fuel system, it's pretty much the usual like always, so we're going to be using a direct injection throttle per cylinder standard bid intake running on the DevMeth fuel, with the fuel mixture set to a 10.5 at a almost full-blown rich setting, with the ignition timing set all the way to advanced setting at 100, and lastly for the RPM limit is set to a 5300 RPM. And finally, for the exhaust of this bad boy, so we're using a turbocharged racing header of a single exhaust with the exhaust diameter set to 203 millimeters, which equals to 8 inches. And for the exhaust itself, so we're going to be using no cata converters, but for the first muffler, set this to a baffled, the second muffler at a none, and finally, bring up that quality. And we get the horsepower rating at 1,366.3 horsepower at 5,300 RPM, and the highlight of the video is the torque at 1,403.1 pounds-feet of torque at 4,900 RPM. And as we can see here right away with the pistons and the counter rods, it is set at 98% stress applied to these two components, and the RPM, it's about to explode according to this pistons here. This is the big reason why that an overly squared engine, especially for an Inline 3, is so fragile in this game. And for this part of the video, I'll give you here what this engine will sound like while cycling through all the graphs out here, starting with the power and torque, then the torque and boost, torque and efficiency, and power and efficiency. After showing you those main important graphs, I'll show you the engine as is by doing some fake gear shifts for a little while, for about 30 seconds roughly, and went off the video right then and there. So bring back the graph visibility and give you here the engine right now. So the engine doesn't rev that high, and despite only having one muffler applied to this here exhaust system, this thing sounds kinda quiet, which is pretty surprising. So that'll do with Automation, the car company Tycoon game with this torque-heavy inline 3 engine. That wraps up by getting the most torque out of every engine in version 4.2. In the future, I'll update my most powerful naturally aspirated engines as the devs at Automation plan on revamping the calculations for those engines. That'll come when that update drops. And for those who are interested in this type of content, please be sure to like and subscribe so you'll miss out on any videos like this in the future, including my Automation to BeamNG Drive videos too. So this is TRIZE, rising up and signing out.